Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, podsters or podroonies, if you prefer. This episode as Horizon Part 1, not Part 2, is coming out at the cinemas. We are going to be talking about that film's star and director, Kevin Costner. So naturally, we'll be talking Kevin Costner films. And I have a brilliant new guest for you, Lee from Spro and Lee Take on the Academy. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Martin. Happy to be here.
Cool. So tell us about your podcast and where can we find you, sir?
Oh, just like everybody else, you can find us anywhere. We have a pretty unique name to the minute that you type in Spro and you'll find us. We do Oscar revisionist discussions. So we pick a movie or a person that we felt as though was undeserving, and then we have it out. I think we've gotten better as we've gone through. We're working on season 5 right now. We do a lot less podcasting than most of the people in the network that I've gotten to know, but we try to put our asses into the ones that we do make. So
excellent. Yeah, I feel sometimes with mine, I'm like, I'm not sure that was good. Maybe I should take a break and just put my efforts into lesser podcasts. But I keep going, man. I'm trying to keep going and just whack them out.
Well, it's nice. It's nice to talk about one or two movies versus because, like, if we're going to take a Best Picture away, Spro and I end up having to watch not only all the other nominees, but we go to all the top 10 lists from the year. We go to Letterboxd and rank it by so it's an undertaking. It's like 20 movies sometimes just for a 1-2 hour discussion. It's daunting.
So Horizon, then, what do we make of it? Are you excited for this one or what? What do you make of it? You seen the trailer?
Man, I have. I can't remember
I sense pessimism in your voice.
Yeah. I mean, can you name the last movie that Costner made that was worth a damn? I sure as shit.
Yeah.
Got to go way back.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Open Range was sort of popular with the very late boomer crowd. I think Tin Cup was popular and has gained some popularity. So maybe Tin Cup was the last really good one that he made. I had high hopes for Mr. Brooks.
Right, yeah.
And The Next 3 Days, both of those were big letdowns. He's one of these actors, too, that's changed his voice as he's gotten older. Have you noticed this?
A little bit, yeah. Isn't that not just an age thing, maybe? Or
maybe. I don't know. It's kind of like the same way that after Jeff Bridges played Rooster Cogburn in the Coen Brothers remake of True Grit, it's like, well, now he sounds like that all the time.
Yeah, he really fucked his voice, probably.
I feel like Costner has that same thing.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, hey, my hat's off to him. He put a bunch of his own money into this saga. And what is it going to be? 4 parts. This first one is 3 hours long. So, yeah. Hey, hats off to him.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was going to be 4 parts. But yeah, if it's going to be 4, I'm just like, wow, that's insane. I mean, he's definitely going back to this more of a old school style of film, frankly. I mean, Westerns are, they're still there. They're not as popular as they once were going way back, I guess, 50s and 60s. Extremely popular nowadays, this century. You get 1 or 2. They never have like big budgets like this one, I wouldn't say. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not like, I mean, I love a Western, but I'm not massively excited for this one. We covered, what was that Idris Elba one recently? The Harder They Fall on Netflix. I quite like that one in terms of its style. That was really kind of a cool movie. This feels like a big sprawling epic that I feel like we've probably seen before many times, and probably, obviously, I haven't seen it. We haven't seen it, but probably better done back then. But who knows?
Yeah, I'm a little more interested in to see what insanity Francis Ford Coppola's
Yeah.
Megalopolis has to offer. Similarly to Horizon, I mean, obviously Coppola was never an actor, but both of them are Academy Award-winning directors. I'm a little bit more interested to see what kind of insanity can come out of Megalopolis. I think you said it best. I think whatever he's going to say in Horizon has been said.
Yeah, definitely. Interestingly, he put a load of his own money into that as well. So, I mean, are these, legendary people, legendary filmmakers, icons of cinema's past? Is that the only way that they can make their own passion projects now, is to literally put their own money into their films? I hope not.
Or do like Scorsese does and just keep being like, hey, do you guys want to buy this?
Yeah.
Netflix is like, sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Apple, do you guys want to buy this? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It'll be in cinemas for a week, but then it will be on streaming. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So your choice then for Kevin Costner films, what did you go with?
Well, I waffled a little bit. I almost went with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Okay.
But I figured that might be bad form to discuss that movie with an Englishman.
Oh, right.
It would have been my fun pick.
Why is he talking American? What's going on? Yeah, I do.
I fucking love that movie. I love that movie the way other people like Top Gun and Pretty Woman. In spite of all of its faults and shortcomings, I still love that movie. But I think it was always going to be JFK.
Any other films in contention for you? Or is it that and Prince of Thieves?
It was pretty much that and Prince of Thieves. The one that you picked that we're going to talk about, I considered briefly. I considered Dances with Wolves briefly. That pocket of about a decade there when he was pretty much in charge as far as leading men were concerned. And then Tom Hanks came along.
Yeah. Waterworld? No?
I did like Waterworld, but I got to tell you, the extended cut of Waterworld, which I only ever saw on TV once, did such a better job of fleshing out the world. I recommend that to anybody if you can find it.
I mean, I watched that as a kid and kind of enjoyed it. It's quite long, I think. Well, it felt long at the time. But yeah, I'm not sure I'll ever go back to that. I'm not sure. If it's on TV, maybe, but I certainly wouldn't pick it for this podcast because I'll be like, yeah, I am not winning. With Waterworld. Famously a huge flop as well.
Well, also incredibly expensive to shoot, which is why for a while it was the most expensive movie ever made.
So what happens in JFK, Lee?
Well, I took your advice and grabbed the plot synopsis off of IMDb, but I can say more if you would like. It is the story of New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison discovering that there's more to the Kennedy assassination than the official story. But
that meets the eye.
I picked this one because this is a mystery that really looms large for Americans of a certain age. I'm not so sure about the Zs and the Alphas, but Gen X and Y really grew up with this like lingering mystique of what really happened. And during the go-go Reagan 80s, conversations like these didn't happen out in the open. And then along comes Oliver Stone, real shit stirrer with his movies. He took this residual rage and disillusionment that he had from Vietnam and Watergate. He translated it into Platoon and Born on the 4th of July, Heaven and Earth. And suddenly these topics were back on the table. And with JFK, Stone really kind of coalesced all of his feelings about the 70s and the 60s and his government. And he put it into this one epic piece of filmmaking that really pushed back on the old narratives and challenged the American people to question their government. So I think the most lasting legacy of this movie is the fact that, well, it isn't the once in a lifetime cast. It isn't the miracle of film editing that we see in it. It's not even John Williams' score. It's the fact that Stone used this movie to raise a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And got some actual legislation into Congress and passed. Not that anybody's listened to it. We still we still don't exactly have closure to this, but Americans were empowered by the discussion, by chipping away at the incredulity and by making the bastard scared. And of course, it is. I think it's my favorite Costner performance. Definitely.
Oh, really? Cool. Yeah. So initial reactions for me, like I saw it for the first time quite a long time ago. Yeah, I really enjoyed it and found it quite profound in the way all this kind of information is put upon you as an audience member. And it's really interesting how Oliver Stone goes about certain things which are quite speculative, I would say. And it's just really interesting in that way. He has a very, very strong viewpoint, and it definitely feels like three different films types of. It all kind of works really well together, but it's three different type of movies, like all put into one, and which I quite liked. It's a very like drama / documentary style movie in the first hour and a half, and then it becomes like a political thriller when Jim Garrison gets too close to what really happened, let's say, and then the last half an hour or so is the courtroom stuff, the courtroom drama, and I think it all kind of works quite seamlessly for me. So directing, then, the opening like documentary montage scene is pretty lengthy, and I found really interesting because it feels like a very objective view on Kennedy and contextualizing this story. There's plenty of like positives and negatives when he was president, even though I thought like the Michael Sheen voiceover was a bit much. I'm not sure you needed that entirely. Then after like the Vietnam stuff, it was really interesting. A really interesting thing happens where, without much breathing room, this black and white footage comes up and a woman gets kicked out of her car. And it looked to me like for a second like that it wasn't really part of like the documentary montage, but it's dramatized. And she comes up again in like the hospital trying to tell people that someone's going to kill Kennedy, and it's completely like woven in like it's part of the opening documentary montage. Then I liked how like all the Dallas stuff has like no voiceover at all, and it's just all done with music, and that was kind of weirdly eerie, just hearing the music with no voiceover when they're literally putting all this real footage together with showing the assassination in that opening kind of montage scene. Do you like that first?
Yeah. No, you actually made me, while you were talking about the dramatization of the woman getting thrown, and it is speculative. You mentioned that. He takes some liberties. But it feels very reenactment-y. Like, we all have seen some true crime documentaries, I'm sure. And it almost feels like exploitative television in a way.
Yeah, because you think what you're seeing in this scene, and just like real stuff. It's very much contextualizing it, and then it's just thrown in without any warning, and you're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. What's going on here? There's no way that's documentary stuff in that black and white little scene. So I found that was really interesting, and I feel like Oliver Stone in a way is kind of playing mind games with you visually at times.
Hey, I'm James Lovino, and I'm here to tell you about Alternate Sides, a movie podcast with a twist. I've worked in the film business for 2 decades, but I haven't actually seen that many movies, and this has been driving my frequent collaborator, Sam, a self-confessed film snob, crazy. So every week, while he's stuck in his car trying to avoid getting a parking ticket, thanks to New York City's alternate side parking regulations, we discuss a classic film I've finally just gotten around to seeing. Alternate Sides, a new podcast about movies, parking, and a 25-year friendship, wherever you get your podcasts.
And you thought that Martin Sheen's voiceover was a little heavy-handed?
A little bit. I mean,
this was before West Wing. He hadn't played the president yet.
Yeah. It was just a tad much. I feel like I could understand what was going on without his voiceover a little bit. A little bit less for me, but
I got you. It does ground it though, in that sort of like historical documentary feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Later in the film, like there's an interesting scene where like Kevin Costner is sat at his chair at home reading like the police testimony on the day of the assassination, the Warren Commission, and you can tell by the use of like color and black and white that the black and white footage is what Kevin Costner is reading is being dramatized. But what's even more interesting in that, as we see more about what this like muddy car is doing in this parking lot, like the pace and the cuts begin to get quicker and quicker, and both the black and white scenes and the color scenes on Kevin Costner become more unconventional and very shaky, to the point where some shots where you can't really tell what's happening in it at all. Then all of a sudden Kevin Costner like wakes up from a dream as we hear like the gunshots. So I thought that was kind of a great way to show off like Costner's character's obsession with this case, because I imagine in reality, I suspect the guy is just reading the testimony in a quiet room with his cigar or whatever, with his pipe. So Oliver Stone kind of realizes that this is, yes, he's using a lot of real footage, but this is a film at the end of the day. So he's got to really try and make this dramatic for Jim Garrison's character in the best way he can, really.
And he does.
Yeah.
With aplomb.
Absolutely. The film loves a flashback and a cutaway to the past, or using like real footage or something dramatized. Like Oliver Stone uses like cutaways like all over the place throughout the first half of the film, and most of it is used to provide context to what's being said. Then there's like a slight change of tone when Joe Pesci's character David Ferry commits suicide, in air quotes. Like the direction is very fluid in this like long take where we see all these different elements of the crime scene, and the film definitely begins to feel like a crime drama at this point, especially when Oliver Stone drops in these like black and white flashback scenes of, you know, David Ferry being killed, but they're very much flashes, very abrupt cut into the scene to give this like film a very like strong change of tone now, but still using the flashbacks in like a different way. So I just really like how it's kind of evolved in this very, you know, flashbacky style. It doesn't say the same narratively.
Yeah, and some of the flashbacks, you know, are definitely intended to be sort of imagined flashbacks, a possible past occurrence. Like in the case of David Ferry, I feel as though the direction leads us to believe this is what Garrison is imagining might have happened, and the reduced frame rate. I'm not quite as technical, but it looks to be a very reduced frame rate to give it sort of that that choppiness to it.
Ghosting.
Yes,
feel.
It's very effective.
Yeah, I did like that. Do you have a favorite scene or shot, Lee?
I do like I remember when I saw this as a kid for the first time, so much has stuck with me. But I think the first shot in the movie, chronologically, that's stuck with me was when, I forget the character's name, but he's right at the beginning of the movie, busts in, he goes, "Boss, the president's been shot." And there's like that dolly zoom, sort of feels like a Hitchcock shot into Costner, and he does the, "Oh God, no." That one stuck with me. The breaking of the fourth wall, which happens a couple times after Oswald gets shot, all the cops just stone-faced staring right at the camera, and it's like a couple different shots of them. Or when Garrison breaks the fourth wall during his closing argument, looks right into the camera and says, "It's up to you."
Yeah. To be honest,
crazy.
I didn't even notice that. It was kind of certainly in the trial scene where he does that. It's so kind of powerful because you've witnessed so much information and so much drama for this character. I didn't really notice it. It's just like you're so in the zone of Costner's performance. Yeah. That was quite clever from Stone there.
Obviously, just seeing New Orleans, there's not enough of it for my taste, but when he first, when it says, 3 years later or however many years later, when he says, "Well, we got homegrown crimes," and then he takes his guys around Lafayette Street, I believe it is, in New Orleans, and he's like, "This is where Guy Bannister was. That over there is that's really great. The orientation. I love all the orienting when they're in the actual windows of the book depository. That's gnarly. That's gnarly.
That's really cool.
But as far as like a single shot, it's really hard. It's really hard for me to pick. I guess
there are many.
I guess I'd go with Donald Sutherland as X and Costner on the park bench at the Potomac Park in Washington, D.C. with the Washington Monument in the background. The giant phallic American.
Right. Yeah, that was a great little scene there. Yeah. I think for me, I've got two scenes. There's a few scenes towards the end where like Oliver Stone goes into like film thriller mode where Kevin Costner is under immense pressure and practically the whole of America is against him. There's like a great little scene where Costner's in the airport and in a toilet cubicle and he can hear people talking about him and they seem to be preparing to do something, but it's from like inside Costner's cubicle. But wisely, he gets the hell out of there and you feel lots of eyes on him as he leaves the airport. Nothing like particularly special, but it's effective because you don't expect like a suspenseful scene in this type of film. Then I love the scene where it feels like it's come straight out of a Scream movie, frankly, where Kevin Costner is just at home and the windows are open and the curtains are being blown everywhere. And the shots are on like the move a lot, very fluid. And all the while, like Robert Kennedy's speech is on TV. And going in, I knew Robert Kennedy gets shot, but I didn't know like from what speech, etc. So you have that in the back of your mind while you watch this very suspenseful direction, you know, that something's going to happen to Kevin Costner, you know, that he could get shot. Then when Robert Kennedy gets shot on TV, the camera like tracks right into the TV like a slasher film, frankly. So for me at this point, like Oliver Stone has really earned a more like expressive style to the film in those two scenes, certainly.
Yeah, the scene in the airport bathroom is... And maybe it's imagined too, you know, maybe he's not in any danger whatsoever.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, the guy that's in the stall next to him when he lights out and then guy comes out and he's doing his pants up. He's like, "Hey, Jim." Like there's no talking in the bathroom.
How did you know my name?
Yeah, right.
Well, at that point, like the whole of America is on his case kind of thing. So maybe that is fairly plausible, but yeah, there is an element of that. Yeah. It could be all in his head. Maybe,
paranoia.
But, paranoia, etc. But if they were like CIA agents or something, I'm like, they're pretty terrible to be honest. But yeah, so that was quite effective because just the change of tone from this kind of very documentary, half dramatized style that goes into this very political thriller aspect, suspense thriller aspect is quite not jarring, but it just feels naturally good to get into that space after.
And then the coda of that shot too, where Michael Rooker, because Michael Rooker's just gotten done telling him like, "Hey, there's going to be an attempt on your life between here and there," and then when he's leaving. When he's, you know, kind of fleeing from the bathroom, he looks over to the magazine stand and Rooker gives him that like
looking shifty as fuck,
fucking wide-eyed look like, "I told you, bro." Makes it even scarier. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Directing score for me then for JFK. Yeah, it's really, really good. I'm not sure I'll go a 9, and that's not because it's long. I do love a long film, and it's very compelling from start to finish for me, and the pacing is really good. And I think what's just really effective, as I've kind of said, is just these transitions of all these different types of film, you know, going from dramatization and documentary style film, going into political thriller, going into courtroom drama, is really well done and very seamless. So yeah, I'll go like an 8.7 for me. How about you, sir?
Okay. You know, the older I get, there's one aspect to the film that I always kind of was like, "Oh, shut the fuck up. I don't need this part." and that's the the melodrama of it between
Right,
Garrison
yeah.
and his wife, played by Sissy Spacek. But the older I get,
Right, yeah.
the more I appreciate it. And Sissy Spacek is just 5 out of 5, always.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if you'd asked me 10, 15 years ago, I probably would have been like, it's an 8 out of 10, because that I think that slows the film down, just, kills the momentum. Now I'm going to give it a 9, because I really think there's not much, in my opinion, that could have been cut, that could have been taken out. I love all of the choices that he makes, right down to Martin Sheen.
You can use a decimal if you want.
9.0.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's interesting with the family stuff, because do you feel like Sissy Spacek is in the film enough for you, or did you want more of the family stuff in there?
No, I think she's in it just enough. You see the arc of their relationship beginning to disintegrate, the problems that she has that are completely justifiable problems that then turn into like, hey, you're putting us in danger. And almost, the part where he confronts her and he's like, you don't believe me all this time and you never believe me. And then Robert Kennedy gets shot. And then basically that's what it takes for her to be like, holy shit, I think you might have been right all along. And then they have that kind of corny lovemaking, but everything's fine from that point on between them.
Right. Screenplay then. Most of like the first hour and a half is a series of interviews of people like that are related to the assassination, witnesses on the streets of Dallas, like Costner talking to people trying to find Tommy Lee Jones's character, Clay Bertrand, who turns out to be Clay Shaw. And there's like a lot of discussions with his team about information they find out about Lee Harvey Oswald. And it's very comprehensive and detailed, and the pacing is very quick, and lots of information is thrown at you. And what I found interesting is that sometimes like little shots or whole scenes are thrown in there unrelated to what we've just seen. And near the start, there's like a strange scene with Jack Lemmon getting beaten up by his colleague who looked through his files one time. Then it feels like a while before we see Jack Lemmon again. Then when they interview Lemmon, things start to add up slightly, and you get like a sense of how muddy this investigation is going to get for Costner and co, but in a very like unsubtle way in how Lemmon's first scene is integrated into the film. A more subtle example of how like Oliver Stone incorporates something that doesn't mean anything at the time is when they talk about Lee Harvey Oswald for the second time at great length, and there's these little shots of his like profile being cut out in a photograph, but they never talk about that in the dialogue, never. But when they come back to the subject of Oswald again, they talk about that this photo is in this magazine, or it could have been faked. And it's like Costner and co are playing catch up all the time, like the way the film is structured and edited. It's like they're trying to sieve their way through so much information. Things get missed at the time and they come back to it later when the evidence adds up. Like the film is like a visual puzzle at times. I thought that was just really kind of clever, the way Oliver Stone constructs these scenes, that you have like a shitload of information. There's only so much they can talk about in a particular scene, and then when they come back to certain information, it adds up more. A slightly clearer picture is being created. So I just thought that was a really clever way to approach the film when you're dealing with so much information.
That's a great point. Yeah, instead of doing, I guess I never noticed that. There are some info dumps in the movie.
A lot.
But yeah, I don't know how many years the script was being worked over, but that's a great point. It is. It also, it puts the onus on the audience to be paying attention in order to appreciate things like that. Well done.
Yeah, certainly in the first hour and a half, 2 hours, it's definitely an investigation film. They're definitely trying to figure out what actually happened, but even by the time you've finished watching the film, you're still never really sure exactly what happened. But I think by the end of the film, you're thinking that it's not really about that anymore. It's not really about the the assassination of JFK. It's more that can America trust their government? You know, regardless of the actual facts. There's just, you know, Jim Garrison is just like, we need to stick to the truth. We need to stick with democracy. You know, it's very quite powerful at the end when they're kind of figuring out, when you're going through all this very dense information, and to funnel all that into very strong, powerful ideals at the end. It's really well done, I think, to get that all this really like fairly raw emotions out in that last half an hour.
It's almost like you've been propagandized in the other direction, which I think,
yeah,
not exactly verbatim what he said, but more or less he's like, hey man, I'm trying to create a narrative in the other direction. So, absolutely. I mean, there's so many quotable lines when we talk about script. Yeah. I guess I would. My favorite will always be. Sorry, am I getting ahead? Did you ask me that yet? We're just talking screenplay. Sorry.
Not yet. I think when like Kevin Costner turns up in Washington and meets Donald Sutherland's character X, you can definitely feel like Oliver Stone's influence and writing really come through, because a lot of what X is saying is frankly, you know, speculation, because he feels like a made-up character, hence why he's called X, I imagine.
But it all feels very logical.
Yeah, it does, yeah. And a lot of what the narrative has focused on is somewhat true, and Kevin Costner's character is working with evidence and truth that they know of before going into this film. So when X is talking about a coup d'etat killed Kennedy, that's Oliver Stone really trying to put the facts in order in the worst way possible for American history. But it's, you know, it's pure speculation on that part, but it's just like a great way in trying to like speculate and ramp up the stakes for Kevin Costner's character. At the end of the day, this is like a movie, not a documentary. Plus I love the very like high contrast, like black and white meeting scene of all the military generals talking about what to do about Kennedy, and it all sort of like confirms that all the black and white scenes we've just seen in the film are always the ones that are very murky and speculative in a good way for the film, that the black and white scenes have a darker edge to them, pardon the pun, to them tonally. Yeah, so that was definitely a scene where you're like, oh, okay, this is getting really quite dark now, you know.
I think my favorite part of the Donald Sutherland sequence, maybe my favorite line from the entire movie, is where Garrison says why, and he's like, that's the real question, isn't it? Why was he killed? Who benefited? And who has the power to cover it up? Those are the most important questions. Yeah. And to put them in that scene gives it credence, because it's all very speculative. General X, you know, that never happened. Garrison was never contacted by some shadowy clandestine figure. No. But there is some purchase in asking those questions, and that's another part that has stuck with me, specifically that. I mean, my favorite question to ask is why. Like a little 5-year-old, why?
Yeah. I mean,
resonated.
I hadn't seen this film for a long time, and that was definitely the scene that I remembered, because it was kind of quite profound is probably too strong a word, but certainly just Donald Sutherland's performance is really great, and you're just like, wow, this is super dark, and like, could this have actually happened, really? You know, it's so convincing. Like, Oliver Stone constructs it in such a convincing way that you're like, it's hard to argue against this. You know, and that's what kind of makes the film kind of really scary. And then, you know, from then on, the film kind of shifts into more of this political thriller, which is great. That's the scene where it's kind of very much a turning point in how you're kind of watching it, you know?
Yeah. You start to feel a little bit of afraid for Jimmy.
Yeah. At the 2-hour mark, when like a trial date is set for Clay Shaw's connection to the Kennedy assassination, the film takes like a bit of a tonal shift where there's like less of these interviews and countless like flashbacks and cutaways. It's more like a political thriller, as we've as we've been saying, like the real footage almost kind of fades away from the film almost, and the film like focuses more on Jim Costner's character. You know, he's on like a talk show trying to get his version of the truth out there. He's at odds with Michael Rooker's character. You know, more of his family troubles come up with his wife. Like a guy is even on the phone to his daughter trying to get her to enter like a beauty pageant. Garrison is constantly like looking over his shoulder. So I kind of like how the film becomes more personal for Garrison. And it definitely shifts from being your standard documentary style / narrative, drama narrative to about the Kennedy assassination of really trying to get to the truth of it, and then it becomes more of a film that what does it mean to Garrison to do this? It makes it more personal for him, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, some of the moments where he has to justify himself to his wife, very powerful.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want my kids growing up in a shithole country. I forget exactly the line, but he says something about I'm fucked and you're fucked too. And she's like, you never spoke to me this way. But the turning point, as you said, you know, Donald Sutherland prophesizes, you know, they'd have killed you already, but you got a lot of light on you. So they're going to try to assassinate your character. And then that's kind of what follows for the next. And it's funny. I met a man. I found myself in a motel in Wyoming once upon a time. Right. And I was sitting on the porch of this hotel with an old man with a cowboy hat and a Southern drawl. And he shared his beer with me, and he let me hold his gun. I was like, no, I'm good. He's like, no, you should take it. But he was from New Orleans. So I started grilling him. I'm like, did you live there in the 60s and 70s? He's like, oh, sure. I was like, what do you make of Jim Garrison? He's like, oh, he was a crackpot.
Right.
So, well, you know, either he was or that smear campaign worked.
Yeah, definitely. Or he really liked his pipe.
Or that.
Funny and interesting lines then. I've got a bunch, like near the beginning with Jack Lemmon and the other dude. He says, here's to a new frontier. Camelot is in smithereens. I'll drink to that.
And then he pours his glass out on the floor.
Yeah. Looks like someone just saved the Dallas DA a pile of paperwork. Oswald was a radar operator. He has about as much use for Russia as a cat has pajamas when like Jim Garrison is just is reading through the Warren Commission and just figuring out that, you know, this just doesn't make sense for Oswald.
So many great lines. I go right to Walter Matthau, to John Candy, to Joe Pesci, to Kevin Bacon. Everything that comes out of their mouths is quotable.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, one that's quite powerful is from Jack Lemmon, where Costner says after the interview, he says, "Nobody knows what we're talking about here, Jack." And then Lemon's like, "Oh, you are so naive," and then just walks off. You know, that's kind of where things start to get murky in the movie. You know,
the part where where they figure out that they found recording devices in the offices, and Laurie Metcalf's like, you know, bugging a district attorney's office. Costner says, "Well, we got the bastard scared."
Or he's always like trying to look on the bright side of everything.
Yeah. And then he goes, "I'm coming to Washington."
See you later, people.
Yeah.
You can see me in the flesh this time.
Yeah. John Candy.
Yeah, he's great. Where he says, "You're a mouse fighting a gorilla. Kennedy is as dead as that crab meat." Which is great.
Yeah. I mean, they just stack the lines in this, just stack up and up.
Yeah.
And up. The closing argument, Garrison's closing argument, where his voice is breaking. Costner, from what I've read, genuinely wept during that performance. When he says, "I got here letters from people that can't afford to send money, but do." Right. Oh, it's good shit, man.
There's one line which I find brilliant, where he's like, "We're through the looking glass, people. white is black, black is white. I found that was great, especially in terms of that there's lots of black and white footage, real footage and dramatized stuff as well. So that was great to see.
Back and to the left.
Yeah.
Pretty popular.
When he's talking to Tommy Lee Jones's character, Clay Shaw, he's like, people like you just walk between the raindrops. I thought it was a great one. But I think my favorite line is from Donald Sutherland, where he's talking to Kevin Costner towards the end of that very quite large sequence. And he says, like Caesar, he's surrounded by enemies and something's everywhere, but it has no face, yet everybody in the loop knows. Yeah, it's just really, really great, powerful line that.
Yeah, a lot of Shakespearean references too. Not that that's a Shakespeare. I mean, there was Julius Caesar, but lots of excellent allusions in this film as well. One may smile and be a villain.
Yeah. Screenplay score for me then. Yeah, I really kind of like it. And I think just how, Oliver Stone has just got all this information, all these kind of facts, and really has really weaved this into quite a remarkable film that doesn't feel too long. I know it's a very long film, but there's great pace to it. And I feel like he's really been able to figure out what he can use as fact in the film and what he needs to dramatize and very much speculate on. And obviously a lot of that speculation is towards the end. And obviously the courtroom stuff is, up to debate whether a lot of that was, trimmed down or whatever. But yeah, so it's really it's just a brilliant, comprehensive look on the JFK assassination. And I think it's definitely the ultimate film about these events. So I'll go a straight 9 for me.
Yeah, I'll say the same. I think 9 is my score as well. It's, I'm on our podcast, television comes up occasionally, and I don't know. I can enjoy a TV show, but there's a real skill. There's a mastery in storytelling if you're going to do it. I mean, I know this is a 3-hour movie. I have the director's cut, which is a little longer than 3 hours.
Yeah.
But there's a mastery in making something with such finite amount of time to say what it is that you want to say.
Yeah.
If you've got a 10 episode season to tell a story, it's like, well, of course you're going to have great character development. You've got all this time. But now take your 10 episode season and compact it down into 3 episodes. Can you still tell the story? Or do you need all of that blank space? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I just love the fact that Oliver Stone doesn't forget that this is a movie, that, there are kind of really great thriller elements to this, and there's some really great creativity. And it doesn't get... I mean, there is a slight repetitive element to it that some people might find frustrating, and certainly in the first half of the film, where it's interviews and cutaways a lot. But I feel like, it's developed really well, that it, the tonal shifts happen very naturally. And yeah, it's really great in that way, that he doesn't forget that this is a movie at the end of the day, and not a straight up documentary with little bits of drama in there that are, dramatized. Acting then, I really liked the little scene where David Ferry, Joe Pesci's character, arrives in Jim Garrison's office for questioning near the beginning, as he has a connection to Lee Harvey Oswald. And the first thing you notice about him is that his ginger wig and eyebrows are awful. Yeah, I know you kind of learn later on he has cancer, but still it just looks, wow, that's bad. And yeah, it kind of works for the scene because his story about geese hunting in Houston was really stupid, and Joe Pesci was just brilliantly shifty and nervously smoking a cigarette in that scene, which was great. And it's just a great little funny scene for me in a very heavy movie.
When he tells him, frankly, I don't buy your story. Really? Which part?
Yeah, it's kind of it's definitely the one scene where it's played for laughs for me.
I think Walter Matthau's performance plays a senator. I can't remember a senator's name.
Yeah.
But when they're on the plane, everything that comes out of his mouth, he does that. I can't even do it. It's so colloquial. But he says, that dog don't hunt. What did he say? What did he say? I'm just a patsy. And you better believe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, he's great.
John Candy's performance again is like, what could have been if that man had lived past 1994? What other performances would we have seen from him?
Yeah, he's I think he's kind of like, obviously I've never been to New Orleans, but he's very much on the edge of doing too much, I think, in my opinion. But what he does do
a little, yeah,
is great. I really was enthralled by his performance, and
like some kind of like a beatnik lawyer.
Yeah, it's just a really great kind of fine balance between still having that quite dramatic, thrillery tone to his performance with, mixing that with comedy, as being this kind of very stereotypical Southern drawl guy. Yeah, with the sunglasses.
Everybody on his team, Laurie Metcalf. Shit, I can't remember the actor's name. Plays Newman in Seinfeld. Plays Dennis Nedry in Jurassic Park. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. Michael Rooker. Can't think of that other actor's name. The dude with the big square jaw. And then, Kevin Bacon. I mean, the Tommy Lee Jones, the performances just keep coming in this movie. It's like Murderer's Row.
Yeah. There's a great, little subtle performance in this scene from Kevin Costner where he's talking to Beverly Davidovich at this club, who was a witness to the shooting at the picket fence. And at the end of the scene, Costner asks her to testify in court, and she says, if they can kill the president of the United States, do you think they're going to think twice about a 2-bit showgirl like me? Then Costner kind of almost slumps in his chair, saying, we're all under pressure, and all the air has just been let out of his balloon emotionally, kind of thing. He doesn't have to say anything to see that on his face. It's saying, is this even possible, pursuing this investigation? So Kevin Costner just does a great job of just this is going to be tough. There are going to be some real tricky moments for him, and it's a really great, subtle, Hollywood star performance for me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he was ever better, frankly.
And also, towards the end in the courtroom stuff, Kevin Costner is great because you practically know, during the courtroom scene, that Clay Shaw is going to get off, towards the end of the scene. The focus is very much on Kevin Costner's performance to get the weight of what we've just watched across to the audience. So he's really pivotal in those final 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Stone wanted Harrison Ford, and Ford turned it down. And honestly, Harrison Ford was my first favorite actor, but I think Costner was the right choice. I think I don't think Ford would have been right in this role. And he lands the plane. We will strike the first blow.
Clay Shaw's interview and David Ferry's last interview has very little flashbacks in there, and it's more character focused without big information jumps to create the drama for me. And in these interviews, the drama is definitely in the characters and the performances. Tommy Lee Jones has a very quiet, confident menace about him, where Joe Pesci is in real panic mode and is very intense in his kind of last scene. So it's just, again, interesting how the tones kind of shift to more not really focusing too much on the information dumps. It's more character and actor focused in those moments to really shift the film. But yeah, Tommy Lee Jones does quite an extraordinary performance. It's just, what do you make of Tommy Lee Jones? It's just quite, really quite menacing at times, as I said, a quiet confidence.
I think you put it beautifully. The way he answers the question, have you ever do you now, or have you ever worked for the CIA? Or are you an operative? Or I forget what he asked him. And the way he's got his cigarette holder with the cigarette in it, and I forget how he puts it, but he says something to the effect of, and if I were to answer yes, do you think that I would be sitting here with a person like you? Just an absolute prick.
Yeah.
Just an absolute prick. But yeah, I mean, one of those roles that Tommy Lee Jones took on in the 90s, because the first time I saw him was Lonesome Dove.
Yeah.
My old man showed me Lonesome Dove. But yeah, just one of those roles that he took on, like this and Natural Born Killers and Batman Forever. Just some strange choices on his part, but I mean, he's always like, you can't take your eyes off the guy.
He's always quite intense in his films, but like he still kind of has that. He creates like an aura in the room when you watch him in this film, and you kind of feel like he's in control all the time, and you know, yeah, it's just really good. And even though you really want Jim Garrison to really, you know, win these witty battles, you always feel like he's not, and that Tommy Lee Jones is just winning all the time, and it's really kind of great to watch, but frustrating at the same time, because you're following Jim Garrison, you want him to succeed, but yeah, it's just a great Weasley performance with that bleached blonde hair. And Joe Pesci as well, like perfectly cast as this just insane, rageful guy that you always see in all his gangster films. And he has a great quality. He brings that quality for this film as well. So,
but very like a vulnerability in this movie that I can't think of him ever displaying in any other movie.
Yeah, because like in Goodfellas, he can be quite a scary dude. But in this, like, you're scared for him. Yeah. You think, like, this guy could get whacked at any moment.
When he talks about getting defrocked and basically blaming, I had one fucking weakness, which I assume he's referring to his propensity for men, and kind of blames everything that's happened to him in his life on the fact that the church kicked him out, forbade him from becoming a priest. And he's like almost near tears.
Yeah. So it's just a really interesting, like, slight energy twist that he brings, you know, to make his character a little bit more sympathetic. Just a slight change, from what we've seen before. Yeah, he pulls that off brilliantly. Favorite performance for you, Lee? Who are you going for?
Yeah, damn, that's a tough question. I guess, I mean, I got to go with somebody that's in the majority of the movie. I can't go with one of these character actors or these bit roles. Yeah, I guess it would be shit. I guess it would be Costner.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's in damn near every single scene.
Yeah, definitely Kevin Costner for me. Because, like, a lot of these other characters, they come and go. Yeah, you have a lot of, like, the actors that are on his team, like Michael Rooker, etc. But yeah, Kevin Costner, he's the glue in this film. He's, as you say, he's practically in every scene. We haven't really spoken about Gary Oldman much. It's just interesting with Gary Oldman's performance of Lee Harvey Oswald, because he's very separate. He just feels very separate from the film in a way that, you know, his stuff, you know, it's all in the, you know, the 60s and etc. And just really bitty stuff from him. His scenes are very short, and it must have been really kind of hard to really work those scenes out. Either that or his scenes are just really chopped down to really just fit them in where Oliver Stone can, you know.
And despite the fact that he is in it intermittently and choppily, as you said, I mean, this is still, you know, top 10 performances by him. I mean,
yeah,
just the man just kept churning them out the whole time I was growing up.
Absolutely.
It's creepy to me when I was a kid how much he resembled Lee Harvey Oswald too.
Yeah. Yeah. Great actor. Yeah, but I think I'll go with Costner as well, just with the fact that a great, like, star-studded performance from him in a subtle way, and just really brings it home in that courtroom scene, because he's very pivotal in that to really bring the film home. So, acting score for me, Oh, this is hard because there's a lot of people in this film.
Yep.
I don't think there's anyone particularly weak, really. When, you know, all these character actors come up, they're all really good and they all kind of bring their own particular type of energy. No one feels like the same character when they come up. So that was great to see. So, but I don't think anyone like really blew me away. So I think I might match the directing score and go like 8.7. How about you, sir?
It's hard to not vote for my movie, like be like 10. But, you know, you do make a good point. But I don't know, you know, they didn't blow me away. But at the same time, is that just because they make it look so effortless? I do think, I mean, I love Pesci in this movie, but he goes to 11 in his final scene where he's like hotboxing cigarettes and, you know, cussing up a storm. And that's when he gives the shooters don't even know. It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma with a fucking riddle.
And you're not distracted by the wig or the eyebrows at that point.
Hey, when they made The Irishman and David Ferry was in that movie, they got the wig and the eyebrows correct again. Should look up a picture of that guy. It looks like him. I'll go 8.5. You make a good point.
Okay. I still think JFK will win, though. Right, let's add up the scores then for JFK. JFK gets an impressive 52.9.
Whoa.
So could be a tight one, not sure, but I think I know which film is going to win. That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favorite films are relating to the episode. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.